Hi, and welcome to Coding with Jesse. I'm Jesse Skinner, and today I'm going to keep working on my website. The next thing I'm going to do here is add some database interaction. So the database I'm going to use is MySQL. I already have it installed on my server, on my laptop, I mean. Actually, I have MariaDB installed, which is made by the same people who originally made MySQL. It's open source and it's 100% compatible. So for all intents and purposes, we'll call it MySQL, even though it's actually Maria. So what I'm going to do is start off with a test for this. Here, let me first figure out where I'm going to put my code. So I have this source folder. I was going to put all my code in the source folder, but I thought about it and decided it's probably better to keep this a public folder. So actually what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make a second folder for my server-side code. Let's call that app. And I'm actually going to, I have this app.js. I'm going to put that inside app as a index.js. So instead of moving it, I'll just make a new file and copy paste the contents over. And then delete the original. So the reason I'm doing that is just organize my code a bit differently. So all my server-side code is going to be inside this app folder. And so I'm going to make a new folder called model. That's where all my data-related code will go. And so inside there, for now, I'm just going to make a file database.js, and that's where I'm going to set up MySQL. So let's make a test. I'm going to mirror the same structure. So I'll make an app folder inside test. I'll make a model folder inside app. And I will make a database. Let's call it test_database.js. I could just call it database.js, but if I have two of them open, it's going to be easier to look at my tabs and figure out which is which. Okay, so let's start off my test. I'm going to pull in chai.expect, and then I'm going to create a test suite for database, and then I'm going to say it should let me run a query. So how I want to use this database file, I need to require that into. So database equals, and I need to go up one folder, 2 folders, 3 folders, 4 folders, I think. App, model, database. And so I'll describe this as database.query, and we'll say I want it to work that I can go database.query, and let's say select 5. And I want to get back a result, and I want there to be one. I want it to be an array where the length is 1 to equal 1, and I want let's call it 5 as value. So I want this to be, I want to be able to go like this. I'm not really sure what I want the behavior to be if I don't name columns, so let's just stick with this. And I want it to equal 5. Yeah, that'll probably come back as a string. That's what I would expect. So let's do it that way. And I definitely know that this test isn't going to run. It's not going to pass. So if I do npm test, it thinks about it. So it's not calling in the new test I made. So I'm going to have to, I think I need to do -- recursive on my Mocha command here. And let's see if that's different. Yeah, so it's saying, oh, I probably have too many or not enough .. slashes. Let's see. So I wonder if I could just do, close that file, I don't need that. I wonder if I could just do app model database. That would be nice. I'm not sure if that's possible. No, can't find that either. So what I'm gonna, let me recount. So I'm in model 1, 2, 3, and then down. So let's try 3 dots, slashes. Yeah, okay. So database query is not a function. Of course it's not, because I haven't actually written any code yet. So when you're doing test-driven development, you start off with a test and you want it to fail. If it doesn't fail, you probably did something wrong. So now I need to write some code that passes this test. And so I'm just going to simply make a query function that passes the test. It's going to cheat a little, but I just want to make sure that everything's working. So I'm going to have one record where our value is set to 5. And that should pass the test. Yep. Alright, now let me change this so that it actually uses MySQL instead of my weird query function. So one thing I'm going to need to do is pass in my credentials for the database. And maybe I should do that as another test. So database dot, let's call it maybe connect. I'll make a connect function. And then I'll say, actually, let's not make that an explicit test. We'll just do that as something I have to do anyway. So I'm going to call database.connect, and I'm going to pass it in my configuration database configuration. So I probably don't want to hard code it here. What I'm going to do is make a config file local to my test folder. I'll just call it config.js. And inside there, I'm going to, So inside there, I'm going to basically copy my, it'll be similar to the config file for my whole project, but it'll be a little different. I don't need port or static folder. What I do need is something that tells where my testing database is. So actually, let's call this, yeah, let's leave it like that. So host name, localhost, user root, password, I don't have one, and database, let's call it test underscore coding with Jesse. So I haven't created that database. Let's actually do that now. So I'm going to run MySQL. Let's just make sure all this stuff is right. And I'm going to, yeah, that worked. So create database test underscore coding with Jesse. Good. And like I mentioned, I'm actually running MariaDB. So not that that actually matters. Alright, so I've created that database. I'm not totally sure. I need to look up the documentation for Node MySQL, just to remember for sure what the what it looks like. So so it's create connection, and then it's host user password database. So I got it pretty close. It's not host name, it's just host. And the rest looks pretty good. So I'm going to be passing that in config.database to the connect. And actually, let's call it init, because maybe initializing does more than just connect. Who knows? That's kind of, I'm kind of designing it as I go here, and that's perfectly expected when you're doing test-driven development. You're trying to figure out how you want to use the code before you start writing it. So that's a good time to sort of design it and make these decisions. So I don't know if that'll work. I mean, I know it won't work because I haven't written any init function yet. So if I run npm test, it's going to go no init function. Database init is not a function. Just what I expected. So I'm going to make a function. It's going to take in config. Makes sense? And let's just leave that. And if I run it, yeah, it's passing the test because, again, I'm just cheating a little bit. And actually, I just remembered I wanted...